discussion, the big conversation for today. And today we're talking about something that affects every single one of us. We're looking at the Ghana Cedi. Now, here's a big question. Can the Cedi actually end 2025 stronger against the US dollar? Now, after a remarkable year, the Cedi has already gained more than 29%. But Fitch Solutions says it might dip slightly in the last few months. So maybe this month and then towards the end, but it could still actually end the year on a positive note. And that sounds good. But of course, it's not that simple. There are still debt pressures, there are policy uncertainties, and the need to keep our exports competitive. So what does all of this really mean for businesses, for investors, and everyday Ghanaians? And that's exactly what we're trying to unpack today. And joining me over the phone lines is Dr. George Domfe. He's an economist at the University of Ghana, and he's going to help us break everything down. Doc, good morning. You're welcome to the Business Breakfast on Z.
Good morning, my brother.
I hope you're doing well, Doc.
By His grace, everything is well with me.
We thank God so much. We haven't spoken in a while.
Yeah.
Good to have you back.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So let's get into our conversation now. Fitch Solutions actually projects that the Cedi will weaken slightly in the last quarter of this year, but still end the year stronger. In simple terms, just for context, what does this forecast really mean for Ghana's economy?
Brother, let me say very good morning to you and thank you for the opportunity. And let me also say good morning to our cherished listeners. Yes, so that is their projection that Cedi may not end the year so well as it is today. Today, it is, I think, the best performing currency, if not in Africa, it should be in the world. And so the question is, are they going to end it this way? Because during this particular year, we have seen Cedi being rated as the best performing currency in the world. Yeah. At the same time, we have seen Cedi being rated as the worst performing currency in the world. And so there is a high degree of volatility. And exchange rate volatility doesn't help with business planning. And so I think it is very important people make projections to see whether or not Cedi is going to fall again as it did sometime back in the early days of September, or is it going to remain so strong as it did in October to the end of the year? I am very positive that Cedi is likely to end very strong through throughout the remaining days of the year, and even next year is going to do very well next year. What I'm not too comfortable and I can't predict is when we enter 2027. And this is what we always try to explain. But you see, some people, because of their love for politics, would attack you. I remember a while ago, was it somewhere last week, I was on Metro. You know, I speak a lot to the radio stations. Yesterday in the morning, I engaged two of your colleague sister stations on similar issues. And, the truth must be told. Why are we here? So it's not so much about the current strength of the city. In as much as that is very good, and it has brought fuel prices down, and it has brought inflation down. We are enjoying stability. It is important to look at the input. Any objective economist who always thinks about the future wouldn't look at what is happening now, but will look at why we got to where we are and where we are likely to go from where we are.
Right.
That is very, very important. So you don't do an economic discussion and say, oh, today $1, 2022, $1 was 17 cedis. Today it is 10 cedis, 92 pesos. I checked it this morning, and it was 10 cedis, 92 pesos. Today it is 10 cedis, 92 pesos. If you say things and you leave it that way, of course the politicians, I don't have problem with them, because depending on who is speaking, some of them will, and indeed, Cedi never hit 17 cities in 2022, as they always say. So for public education, the interbank exchange rate was about 15 cities. it never hit 17. But the forest and the black market, it went over 17 cities. That one, you see, most when we are using data, we don't use the black market and the forest race. In fact, that is what is the reality, because if you go to the black market or the forest, you are likely to get whatever that you want. Unfortunately, when we are doing analysis, we always have to resort to the Bank of Ghana's interbank exchange rate, which never hit 17.
Right.
But that's what people say.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But and so you ask yourself, is this sustainable, what we are experiencing? And that's what we've been talking about. Now we are here today because the year 2021, our total debt stock hit $60 billion US, and our debt to GDP ratio was 78.2 or so. And so our debt has become unsustainable. We were suffering. We were struggling to pay our debt. And immediately we started what became known as debt restructuring. When we started this particular activity, the other time I came to your studio, I showed you the data that by the end of 2024, our debt that was 60 billion had dropped to 49.3 billion, meaning over 11 billion had been slashed off before we entered this year. And that was not the only positive thing that came along with the debt restructuring. One very important thing was that we are not going to pay our stock. We are not going to service our stock until the end of 2026. And so today, as we speak, we are not, the whole year, Ghana government has not paid a penny on the stock. It's only the flows, the debt financing. We have two of them. We have what we call the flows. We have what we call the stock. The stock is what is the problem. The flows are the coupons. So Ghana government today is paying the coupons, but Ghana government is not paying the stock. That was always taking almost 30% of our total, revenue. But you ask yourself, why is this a problem to the exchange rate? Yes, just as when Ghana government goes for loan, when Ghana government sells oil, when Ghana government sells any raw material, the proceeds, the money comes to Bank of Ghana. When Ghana government goes for loan, the money comes to Bank of Ghana. They keep it in the reserves, and when they keep it in the reserves, they give Ghana government Cedi equivalent, and that's how Bank of Ghana builds the reserves. Now, when they build so much reserves, anytime Ghana government debt is due, they have to pay it on behalf of the government. And so now the BOG has the luxury, because it is not paying debt. And the debt payment, as soon as you begin to pay, every 3 months you pay. So at the end of every quarter, 31st March, you prepare to pay debt. 30th June, you prepare to pay debt. 30th September, you prepare to pay debt. And then the last quarter, 31st December, you prepare to pay another one. And so, per these arrangements, the BOG would have been overwhelmed, sending and thinking about how to get money to pay Ghana government external debt. And so, they wouldn't have been so much comfortable always intervening in the market the way they do. Because the same money they would have used to enter the secondary forest market would have been the same money they would have been forced to spend on our debt, payment services of our debt stock, external debt stock. And so now the luxury is there, but nobody can tell after 2026, when we enter 2027 and we come back to where we were and begin to pay the external debt stock, would they be comfortable pumping so much dollars as they have been doing? Because now, for now, I can say that is the BOG, because I keep on saying this, and sometimes the politicians will send you messages of insult and attack. I quite remember this whole thing started from 10th April. 10th April, $1 was going for 40 cedis, 90 pesos. 10th April, and that was when the new governor started what he's doing. And that year, the remaining number of days for April, they supplied 490 million into the market. May, they pumped 422 million to the market. June, they continue with $800 million into the market. And when they did, dollar immediately depreciated against the city. City appreciated, and it moved all the way from 14.9 on 10th April to now 10 cities, 30 pesos in June.
Yeah.
And I quite remember I was part of a program, Key Point, Alfredo Kansas program TV3. There were so many people there. The current economic spokesperson for the vice president, Professor Khaled, Joe Jackson, Martin Tebu, and all those people. And I was almost the only one with a voice that it was the Bank of Ghana's intervention that has caused sudden CD appreciation. But my other colleagues on the other side thought that it was what they called fiscal consolidation. I protested. Can I finish this?
Yes, you can.
I protested and said that it couldn't have been fiscal consolidation, because when we say fiscal consolidation, Ghana government is the biggest spender in the economy. The moment Ghana government doesn't spend money, flow of money, the velocity of money, that the movement of money from one hand to the other slows. And when that slows, the level of patronage for goods and services goes down. And so people who had imported and were selling wouldn't get the patronage enough to go out there to chase dollars to import. Because if what you have imported, people are not buying, why do you have to go for dollars to buy another one? And so that is the transmission through which fiscal consolidation can have impact on CD depreciation. And it can never happen within 6 weeks. That CD fiscal consolidation, suddenly, Ghana government is not spending, so suddenly, within 6 weeks, CD had dropped from 14.9 to 10.3. It doesn't happen. And when I said this, they protested, they called me names, you are a politician, you are speaking for MPP. But few days after this engagement, I was happy when World Bank came to say BOG's intervention is too much, that is what is causing it. IMF came to talk about that. And when the two international, respected, institutions came out to say BOG was spending earlier, the governor had come to say that they were not intervening so excessively as people have said. But later, the same governor came to say that they have reduced the intervention by 56%. I was asking myself, how do you reduce something that had never been there? Because earlier you said it wasn't because of the intervention. That was why CD was becoming so stronger. You attributed it to the good management of the economy. So are you telling me that now the so-called good management, you have stopped it, right? And rightly so, as soon as the 56% reduction in the intervention was implemented, getting to the end of August, we saw what happened to CD immediately. It depreciated, and interbank exchange rate went as far as 12 cedis, 60 pesos. Until 1 week, they came with $300 million. It didn't work. And then the following week, that was about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, they pumped 1.1 billion. And as soon as they did that, CD found another strength. And today, it's still one of the best. And so clearly, you don't need anybody to tell you. It is the intervention that is causing it. And the intervention, how much do we have? Is it going to be sustainable when we enter 2027 and we are servicing our debt stock in full? Can they come out to do what they are currently doing? That is the question.
Right. Okay, Doc. A number of issues. I mean, you talk about the debt situation, and you're saying that the debt situation is still there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
In fact, it is better. We always use debt to GDP ratio to assess whether or not you are in danger. And West African Convergence criteria has it at 70% threshold. So the moment your debt to GDP ratio hits 70%, your debt has become unsustainable. In other words, you struggle to pay to service your debt, or if ever you do it at all, you do so at the detriment of very essential services you cannot provide to your citizens. And so, if you look at the whole thing, 2019, our debt to GDP ratio in the new series was 62.5%. In 2013 constant prices, it was 62.5%. That meant that we were far away from the 70% threshold, and we were not in debt crisis.
Right.
But in 2020, it moved to 76, and we were plunging to debt crisis until the end of 2023. Indeed, 2024, we were out of the wood. It dropped to 60, I think 62 or 61.8% at the end of 2024, and so we were out of the wood. And now, during March, they still cancel about $2.6 or so billion of our external debt, and immediately it was forced down to I think 43 point something percent in April. And again, from even April to date, because of the Cedi, the exchange rate, and Cedi has gained so much strength. If you quote the debt in Cedis, it has gone down drastically. Except that in terms of other foreign currencies, it is still as it is. But in terms of the Cedis, debt has really gone down.
Okay.
And but we are still borrowing anyway. We are not borrowing. We are borrowing. And let me say this for education. Some political commentators have said that the new government has never borrowed. That's not true. They have not gone to capital market to borrow. That is true. Because for the past 3 or 4 years, Ghana government has never gone to the capital market. And so they've never gone to capital market to borrow. That is true. But it is not true that we are not borrowing, because even if you issue treasury bill, you are borrowing. And every week, Ghana government issues treasury bill.
Yeah,
and so we've been borrowing heavily through that process.
Okay. Doc, we're going to touch on these issues that you talked about, the debt situation. We'll also look at the intervention, the BOG's intervention in the market and all of that. We'll talk about that briefly. But I just want us to still put some context to our conversation today. Now, we've seen several projections. Now, from whatever you said, do you think, first of all, that they are being overly optimistic, or it is actually it's actually in line?
Oh, yeah. For now, the economy is doing very well.
Okay.
And when we say the economy is doing very well, listeners, please don't try to be, so I find it difficult sometimes when I'm saying the economy is doing well. Because the moment you say that, people are going to say it's not being reflected in our pockets and all those things, Yeah, that is true. I quite agree with them. But you see, these indicators that we use to assess the performance of the economy, we call them macroeconomic indicators. They are indicators, they are just like indicators of health. If you go to hospital today, they are going to use, and you report to the doctor that you are sick, the first thing the doctor is going to look at is your temperature. If it is within the range of 37 degrees Celsius, it means you are okay. But if it is higher, about 38, 39, it means it gives an indication that there's something wrong with you.
In this case, what would be our temperature?
Is there?
In this case, what are we testing to tell our temperature?
Yeah. So the temperature, one of it is growth. In fact, that is the most important economic indicator. The growth tells it's everything that happened in terms of exchange rate, inflation, all those things will be reflected in the growth that we get in the year. And so what is the growth of the economy? And you can see that we are getting back to the pre-COVID years. Before COVID, that was 2019, the economy was growing at 6.5%. But the following year, 2020, the growth went down to 0.5%, and that has been described as the worst growth rate since 1983. The worst growth rate since 1983 we had in 2020. But 2021, the growth moved up again to 54%. 5.4%, forgive me. The growth moved again to 5.4%, and we thought we were getting back until we entered 2022, and the global economic turmoil didn't help. And that year, we grew at 3.1%, almost 3.1%. Some people will say 3%. If you push it up, it becomes 3.1%. And so it meant that we have started declining. Then we entered 2023, things were not good at all. And that year, we subscribed to the IMF Extended Credit Facility, and they also forced us to cut our expenditure. The moment you cut expenditure, it affects the growth. And so Ghana government cut the expenditure, and IMF even projected that the economy would grow at 1.5%. But thank God, we defied their projection, and the economy managed to grow at 2.9%. 2023, 2024, the economy did better. It grew at 5.7%. 2024 would have done even better, but agricultural sector didn't do well at all because the rainfall was very bad. This year, I expect the economy to grow beyond 6%, because if you look at the projections, we are getting back to where we were before COVID. Before COVID, the last inflation for Ghana before COVID was December 2019. It was 7.9%. And today you see our inflation has now picked up. We are at 8 to suggest that we are getting back to pre-COVID conditions. And when before COVID condition, it didn't mean that everybody in Ghana was okay. Poverty was still very high. Ghanaians were struggling. Our economy is a struggling economy. And so if I say the economy is doing very well, I'm saying it in relative terms compared to the situation in 2022. We can all see that things are far better today.
Okay, Doc. Yes. So I want us to look at this. Now, we've seen several projections over the years. How reliable are these forecasts generally, and how much weight should business leaders and policymakers place on them?
Yeah, so for example, the debt to GDP ratio, my understanding is that Ghana, even though West African Convergence Criteria puts it at 70%, IMF has it at 60%. So as far as IMF is concerned, if your debt to GDP ratio is anything higher than 60%, they see you to be in debt crisis. And so as a country, we also have our threshold, which is 55. Finance Ministry, the threshold is 55%. And even with the 55, the projections is that before we end the current program with IMF, we should be able to do something around 40. And fortunately, during the mid-year review, the debt to GDP ratio had declined to 43. But I told people that that was not sustainable because a new government had just taken over from an old government. And in March, they have set in motion what we call debt restructuring, foreign debt restructuring, and they were canceling some of our debt. And so in March, a huge amount of debt was canceled, about 2.6 billion. And as soon as that happened, it falls down our total debt stock. In fact, when we entered April, our total debt stock had declined to about 43, 42 billion. Up down from 60 billion it was at the end of 2021. And so clearly, at that time, the figures were so beautiful. But the new government has come, and they will definitely have to borrow, which they have done, because at the end of August, the data that I saw, if it was anything to go by, our debt had moved from 49.3%, billion dollars it was at the end of December, to now 59.9 billion. The other time, when I was at your station, somebody called to suggest that he doesn't understand why, when I'm quoting debt, I do it in dollars. And instead of him waiting for my explanation, he used his ideas. I don't know where he got those ideas anyway, to suggest that I was maybe in quote very stupid. Very stupid for quote. I mean, let me end on this. Very stupid for quoting debt in dollars. I do this. I quote the economists, good economists, would quote figures in a sustainable a unit that is more
stable,
consistent. Dollar is very, very consistent. The value of the dollar, in fact, compared to all currencies in the world. And indeed, even if you go, I have attended IMF World Bank annual meeting before. When you go there, we don't mention any money apart from dollar, And today, again, because of the fluctuations, even the higher volatility in Cedi. Today, Bank of Ghana comes to the market, Cedi does so well. Tomorrow, they don't come, and Cedi becomes the worst performing, currency. With that volatility, it would always change our debt if you want to quote it in dollars. And that is why when the budget is read, this budget is going to be read, you see that anytime the finance minister mentions our dollar, our debt in cedis, they will mention the dollar equivalent. I think the other time when I was at your studio, I showed it to you.
Yeah.
So it is not for any reason why, the other people, and I've told people this, it is good that everybody should talk. But you see, sometimes they should allow the experts to also explain or use their expertise to explain certain things.
Right.
I'm not in any way saying that those on the street shouldn't talk. Some of them are far better than, some of us. That is true. But you see, this is a course I have been taught, and I have been teaching it at the tertiary level for over 15 years. And I know some of the issues that you may raise, I have it already. So instead of you maybe using a very bad language to describe what I say, you can say, why do you can ask a question. Students ask us these questions all the time. Why do you always quote, debt in dollars? And I will tell you that I hardly even quote dollars in figures. I always use debt to GDP ratio. That determines your strength and your ability to pay what you have. It's not so much about how much you have, but you have an ability to pay it, and that is reflected in debt to GDP ratio. That's what we use. Debt is always nominal. The figures that we use, the nominal figures that we use, it doesn't tell the better story. And so, listeners, I beg of you, please, let's man our language. If you don't agree with somebody, you should find better way to say it rather than calling them names because you belong to this party. That's why you're speaking this way. I mean, it doesn't help with Ghana's development.
Right, Doc. Right. Right. Thank you very much. I mean, I think those issues haven't come up today, so it's fine. You've laid this thing. Let's take to what our conversation today, and then let's make some progress on that. Now, back to the Cedi conversation. I mean, you indicated that it's kind of artificial, right? The appreciation is artificial. But you would agree with me that market confidence doesn't happen by accident, does it?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. The confidence depends on what has been happening. And this, the volatile nature of the Cedi this year is not something that brings confidence that is needed, because as we speak, business people have been asking me privately whether or not Cedi is going to be depreciated again as a date. It means that they don't have that confidence, because during the year we saw Cedi being rated as the best performing currency in the world, and at the same time during this year we saw Cedi again be rated as the worst performing currency. That does not bring confidence. And I have always maintained, if we want the confidence, the exchange rate, the current exchange rate regime is managed floating exchange rate regime. The floating aspect is what brings confidence. The managed one is what the Bank of Ghana is doing. That is, when I have money, let's go and manage the strength of the cedi. The Bank of Ghana does this all the time, and they did it in 2022 when they had only 9.9 billion in their reserves between January to July, when Cedi depreciated from 6 cedis 20 pesos to 8 cedis 20 pesos. Afterwards, what did we see when they didn't have the money to do the manage? Cedi suffered the worst depreciation in over three decades. It was so bad that it went from 8 cedis 20 pesos in July to over 15 cedis in October. Interbank and Forest over 17 cedis. It didn't help, and everybody suffered, right? And so what we think the floating, and when we talk about the floating component, which is the market, that is about the demand and supply of the dollar or foreign currencies. So the demand and supply of foreign currencies would always determine the value of the local currency. So in Ghana, what are the demands? Who are the people who need dollar? These are the people, the investors, foreign investors who have invested in this country. Anytime we enter the new year, the first quarter of the year, they are allowed to repatriate their profit. Unfortunately, Cedi is spent only in Ghana. And therefore, when Vodafone, MTN, and all those now, Telecel, MTN, when they are repatriating their profit back home, they use dollar. And so almost every first quarter of a year, Cedi is always under pressure. Again, getting to the last quarter of every year, especially the end of the third quarter, I should say, to the very first few days of the third quarter, you see pressure on Cedi, because why? People want to import for Christmas, and so import is also another reason why Cedi is always under pressure.
Yeah.
Another reason, people go abroad to seek medical attention. They use dollars, and people send their wards to schools abroad. They use dollars. They need dollars, and so all that. But what brings dollar to the country? Kwame Despard and the other people need fufu. You export it, you bring dollars. When we sell cocoa and all those other things, we bring dollars. And so the question the government should be looking at the moment, if we really want Cedi to be where we think it should be is how do we reduce the demand? And how do you reduce the demand? You reduce the demand by building more factories to at least produce many of those things that today you use dollar to import. By building strong health system so that people wouldn't have to travel to India and other places to seek medical attention. You know, if you do all these things, your school very good educational system, so that instead of Ghanaians going abroad with dollars to study, people rather move from other countries to come to Ghana to study and bring in, dollars. All these petty things, if you get to do them right and you get them right, that is when Cedi will be determined. The strength of the Cedi will be determined from the component of the floating.
Right.
But the managed one has never been sustainable. It is always artificial. And I was talking about when Bank of Ghana didn't have dollars between August and October 2022, and we saw Cedi depreciating from 8 cedis 20 pesos in July to 15 cedis interbank and 17 cedis, in the forest. But December 2022, $1 was going for 8 cedis. Why? Because Bank of Ghana got so much money when during the crisis, the officials of the government didn't sit. They were looking around for dollars. When they got so much and they had it, the then governor pushed so much into the system that by the end of December 2022, the dollar that was 17 in the forest market in October had dropped down. And the interbank that was 15 had dropped to 8%. 8. Had dropped to 8 cedis.
Okay.
And so that clearly tells you it's not sustainable, because when we entered 2023, what happened to the city? It suffered again. 2024, it suffered again. And so the managed one, you as a government don't focus your attention on so much Bank of Ghana intervention, sustaining the city. It has never been sustainable all over the world. And it's not only Ghana, everywhere in the world, it's never been sustainable. What is sustainable is look at the floating and work on it. That is what even develop the economy.
Right.
Yes,
so you mentioned the imports dependency. What practical steps would you have taken differently to reduce it within the short term?
Within the short term, it's not too possible because you can't buy an import. Within the short term, maybe the practical measure would have been that I ban import. Once import is banned, nobody would need dollars to go and import anyway. Yeah, but then let me say that on a more serious note, taking good care of our agricultural sector. Agricultural sector provides Ghana, the agri sector provides over 60% of what we eat, almost 70% of whatever food we eat. We get it from the agricultural sector. Of course, the other, Ghanaian agricultural sector, the other is always what imported. And so my question is, if you get the agricultural sector to work very well, some of these things we will not see. For instance, we spend so much importing chicken thighs, chicken tail, and those tilapia and all those things. Tilapia we can get enough to consume and even export if we are serious. This chicken thighs, it's not good for us. Growing up in Kumasi, I saw quite a number of huge poultry farms, bacon farms, and all those things. We have to revisit those.
I think this week the government is actually, launching their program. The Akukon Kitinkete program, which is supposed to actually
the poultry farms.
Yeah,
we can build more poultry farms because we spend so much dollars importing meat, fish and meat. We spend so much. So let's see.
Hello, Doc. All right, I think we lost Dr. Domfe. There, we'll try and reconnect him, and then we can continue this conversation. But we've said a lot of things. Doc has been talking about the fact that the debt situation is actually still dire, and also the Cedi appreciation is artificial. I'm trying to ask him a few questions along those lines, and my question to him was whether, I was asking him in line with what's the last thing he was saying, what would he do differently to make sure that we deal with the import situation? Because he talked about our import dependency as a country, and he was actually sharing that with us. I'll reconnect him and then we get him to continue that point. And so please stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, so yeah, you're trying to tell us what practical steps you would take differently. I mean, you would have taken differently
Yeah.
to reduce our import dependency within the short term.
Yeah, so within the short term, I'm sure agricultural sector can respond positively. And let me say, if you look through the 24-hour economy agenda, one thing that I love so much about this policy document is the intention to irrigate greater part of the land along Volta River. I think that is the most novelty thing I saw in the document. Otherwise, most of what is in the document, you'll find those same things in Vision 2020 by Jerry Rollins. You'll find the same thing in Kufuor GPRS 1 and 2. You'll find the same in Atamils and Mills's and Mohammed's Ghana Shared Growth Development Agenda and the Kufuor's Ghana Beyond Aid Agenda. All those things are always there, so beautiful. At the end of the day, you don't see not so much. You don't see so much thing coming out of it. But I pray that this time things become different and we see greater part of the land along Volta irrigated. If we are able to do this, then in the short term, I'm sure we can even grow enough rice to feed the country, if not to even export. I was very surprised when at the end of the year 2022, our rice self-sufficiency ratio hit 49%. I think that is the highest I've seen with us. And when your rice self-sufficiency ratio reaches 49%, what it means is that if 100 bags of rice are consumed a day, 49 of them are produced in Ghana. And I think the then minister did very well, Dr. Akoto Afriye. He was excellent. He did so well. They built some factories to help with rice production. And I want to urge the current government to continue with where Dr. Akoto Afriye left off. It was good, I should say, policy, initiatives to make sure you cut down on rice import. I remember a year earlier, if you look at the data, a year earlier, you see that we imported about 850,000 metric tons of rice, if the figures are right. I think around that. But the following year, it dropped to 400 something, but I'm not too sure of 2023, 2024 because I haven't seen the data. Sorry, I mean the 2024 because 2023 data is what I'm talking about. I'm not too sure of what happened in 2024. I wish what happened in 2023 would continue in 2024 and maybe even now, so that our local rice farmers are able to produce more. When they do, they are going to cut down on import because every year we spend almost $2 billion, importing food. And a chunk of it is on rice, over $1.2 billion every year importing rice. That's not good enough. When we can grow more rice to even export, we are rather importing, And so that's one within Ghana government can do something about it. And within a year or two, we may even stop local rice importation. Nigeria and some other countries do that. They depend solely on local rice. And I think we also have it. We have what it is to do same here. I talked about poultry, the meat. Ghana, one of the reasons why workers are struggling is because food is so expensive in this country. And it's all because almost all what we eat, we import. I'm talking about those the meat and those other things.
Right.
Okay. And so even today I hear we import pork. Sometimes when you hear about some of this, you don't want to believe it, but that's the truth. We import pork for what? Government can take that initiative, that bold initiative. Let's encourage the young ones who don't have job to do. Let's push them into pork. Pig farming. And fishing. Let's push more into fishing. Let's push more into cassava production. Some time ago, I was shocked when I heard that industrial cassava starch, we import it from outside. You don't want to believe in some of these things. When a study somebody has done and I chance upon it, If you go through it clearly, we can use cassava alone to develop this economy if we want to, because cassava starch is one of the hottest commodities on the global market.
Right.
We can do that, and we don't spend so much growing more cassava. It's a government initiative that we need, and so I believe in what they have said. Grow Ghana. If you go through Grow Ghana, want to grow the agricultural sector, and they make Ghana as well is supposed to boost industrialization. For industrialization, the old government did very well with it. If you look at all the way from 1957 to date, if you are looking at a government that did so well with industrialization, you can't count them out. For example, during the time, we saw a giant oil, refinery being established around Tema. At the time they were hesitant. It had capacity to refine over 40 barrels of crude oil, 40,000 barrels of crude oil a day. And that was a very positive thing. I hear it can even refine 100,000 barrels a day if they complete. And that would have saved the country a lot, because at the moment we consume 135,000 barrels a day. And we spend dollars to import all those, refined petroleum products. And so if you have it home in Ghana, it's good. Again, we spend over $1 billion a year importing cars. The old government did very well bringing into Ghana 6 car assembly plants that are currently working. The problem has become the patronage, because new cars are very expensive, And these 6 car assembly plants, they are able to, build over 120,000 cars a year. And that is enough to meet our demand. And so it's up to the government. How do we, leverage on the credit scoring system that is used elsewhere in Europe and the other developed world? You don't use physical. If you are a citizen, you don't need to have money to buy cars and those things. You use your credit score to make purchases. And so how do we, learn from what is happening even in South Africa here?
Right.
So because the moment you begin to do that, then you are creating markets for the car assembly plants to produce more. And as they produce more, in no time, people in Mali, in Senegal, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and other places who want to go abroad to buy cars will come to Ghana, and they will bring foreign currencies. And so these are all the things. And since the new government came, I don't know what how they are going to continue with what the old government did. Again, one district, one factory was a very good concept. I wish they could continue, even though now the secretariat is no more working. But then they can find other ways to make sure they continue what the old government did. They brought in each week over 200 factories. Of course, some of them are having challenges and they are not working at the moment, but most of them are working, which is very positive. And so let's continue. My only worry is that if I were an official of this government, I would have advised that we kept the, the 1D1F secretariat. With them changing, and now if you look at their format under the Make Ghana, you don't see much difference between what they are introducing and then what they came to see. And my worry is that if NDC is going to rule Ghana forever, I don't have any problem. They can bring new things, and that's what's going to tell us where we want to go. But once they have come to change it, the indications are that if CPP also comes next 4 years, then they are also going to change it. And when that change comes in, it doesn't move us with the speed we need.
All right, that's okay. Well, let me just announce our phone lines in case anybody's listening to us and they want to join a conversation. You can send us a WhatsApp on 0544321019, 0544321019, and then we'll read your messages for you. You can as well call us on 030395661, 030395661. And then we'll give you the opportunity to share your thoughts with us this morning. We're on Facebook at ZFMGH. We're streaming live. Please drop a comment there, and also on YouTube at Z Multimedia. You can drop a comment there, and I'll read that for you. All right, Doc. Yes, let's stay within the conversation this morning, and we Now, Fitch highlights improved investor appetite for emerging markets, and as one of the things, what makes investors return, and what could easily scare them off?
I think one of the things that normally would bring investors to your country had to do with the legal system, the judiciary. Because if somebody is coming to pump so much money into your economy, they want to make sure if something happens, they will get good justice.
Right.
And so they don't joke with justice at all. And so, yeah, that is one thing. And then Ghana, fortunately, I think our judiciary has been one of the best in Africa. And for that, we don't have much problem. Another one is war, civil wars, and, other things that some countries, especially those in the Sahel region, are currently facing. And the northern part of Nigeria, but Ghana, I think until recently, we were very peaceful. But today, the Boko crisis, which is now getting better, and what recently happened around Bole Enclave, there were very bad signals, and they can scare off investors. But if we put these things aside, investors would also want to know the level of education, the skills, how many adult what's the proportion of the adult population that is educated. They want to know about that. The skill set of the people, vocational, technical, because especially if what they are coming to do here will demand that they recruit people with certain set skills. They look at all these things. And again, raw material. What they are coming to do here, is it possible they will get raw materials here and they wouldn't have to import? They look at all these things. But importantly, the market after I have produced. And so what? Who is going to buy what from what is produced? They look at all these things and all these things put together always push Ghana ahead of our competitors in the sub-region. And so over the years, Ghana has been receiving the highest foreign direct investment flows. Yeah.
I see. Well, but some analysts actually argue that the Cedi's recent strength that we are seeing is more sentiment driven than structural. Would you agree with that assessment?
Partly, some extent. The extent to which I want to agree with it is to understand where it can prevent speculation. There are three motives for demanding money. And so people will demand for money for what we call transaction motive, precautionary motive, and also what we call speculative motive. The speculative motive, especially for the foreign currencies, is when we see that dollar is likely to fall, Cedi is likely to fall tomorrow. So today, I would use all the Cedi that I have to buy dollars and then sell it tomorrow. Indeed, one of the reasons why Cedi depreciated so fast for 3 months in 2022 was the speculative motive, because speculators got to know that $1 that was 6 cedis 20 pesos in January depreciated to 8 cedis 20 pesos, and by August, interbank exchange, October, it had moved to 17. And so the projections were so clear that things were going to get worse. And so many were in the market buying more dollars to keep and sell in a better time. And so the speculation, I must say that the speculation has been well dealt with since this government came to office. Because the old government has so much reserves, almost 2 million short of 9 billion. And so they could have done all these interventions, but they didn't do the interventions until the new government came and they started boldly pushing more to it. It also has its own negatives. And so maybe that's why the other government decided not to push so much. And so these people decided to push so much. When they decided to push so much, Cedi regained strength, and it was doing very well, became the best performing currency in the world. Of course, at a point, it also became worst performing currency. And they came back again, pushing more. And today they have told us that they have almost 12 billion there sitting in the reserves. And so that alone would definitely push away the speculative motive for demanding, because the idea is that if you even go to buy, the bank will still come and push more to drop down the value of the dollar. And so from that bit, I would agree with you, but you cannot take out the structure. The structure, indeed, is the most significant. The speculative motive is not as significant. That is coming from the market. It's not as significant as the structure. The structure is about the demand and supply issue that we talked about. How many people are selling what in foreign market to bring how much dollars to the currency compared to what we are going to the foreign markets to bring back. And we see that we always have structural challenges. Over the last couple of years, we've been recording trade surplus to suggest that our export values are now higher than the import values, but most of it is driven by oil and gold, which is not something I love so much. I would have wished that some of the things that we produce locally, like this wheat, chocolate, and those things that Kwame Despite and other people are producing. When I hear those are the reasons why we are having trade surplus, then it tells me that we are creating more jobs for Ghanaians, because that would have meant that you have more factories producing other things that people in other countries need. And that is how we can develop this economy. So those structural problems are there, right. And they are very huge. And the market is very weak. The structural challenges very, very, very serious. And that is why any little thing that happens globally affects our economy. Today, a barrel of crude oil is being sold at $64. If it goes back to $121, it was somewhere some of the days in 2021. I tell you, fuel prices will go back again. We don't have enough shock absorbers, so we shouldn't. We have to be very careful. It's too early days to celebrate what is happening. Because what we are seeing today, we saw all of them in 2019 before the COVID. Those are a few years before the COVID, and so we haven't seen anything too different. We have to be very careful. I think what will be different is us building more poultry farms, building more factories to produce most of our things that otherwise we would have imported. When I see those things, then I can see that we are working on the structural challenges. And that is how people in this country can live comfortably.
Right. Okay, still on the Bank of Ghana's role, I just want us to talk about that, because I realize that all throughout the conversation, that's been a major thing you've been talking about, the intervention, really. Are you saying the central bank should stop intervening altogether? And wouldn't that risk another rapid depreciation?
Bank of Ghana shouldn't stop, because I said earlier that our current exchange rate regime is managed floating exchange rate regime. And indeed, let me put it on record, it's not only this governor who has started intervening. Since the day we adopted managed floating exchange rate regime, we have been supplying. Indeed, almost every 2 weeks, Bank of Ghana supplies. What some of us are saying is that the rate of the intervention is what is too much. I have tried to understand why they would even force the Cedi down from 14 Cedis, 90 pesos. The new governor came to meet. Why would he force it down to 10? I've been struggling to understand why he wants to force it down to 10. I would have maintained it if I were the governor. I would have maintained it at 14. And let me say that if he had maintained it at 14 Cedis, 90 pesos, he came to meet in April, I'm telling you that would have still meant that the bank would enter the market to intervene. If since they came and they had never intervened,
it's not quite clear.
$1 would have gone over 30 cities. So they intervene, but you can manage the intervention to keep it around 15. I am thinking that would have been far better than forcing it down to 10. Now that you force it down to 10, then almost every month you have to look for over $1 billion to intervene. And that means a lot to our reserves, especially 2027 when we are going to
maybe my final question.
Our debt.
Because our time is up. We should be off by now. But maybe my final question. So how would you balance preserving reserves with maintaining market confidence? How would you do that, Doc?
Yeah, so exactly it's also I think I provided answer to that. You try because now we have seen the CD. I think it's much more comfortable being having it at 14 to 1. You know, you wouldn't have to spend so much um, like what they are doing currently. And so if I were them, I would allow it to go around 14 and then push more to maintain it at 14. Since they came, if they had maintained it at 14, that would have been very good because in that case, by this time, the reserves, most of what they have pumped into the secondary forest would have been part of the reserve. Our reserve would have now gone beyond 17 billion, dollars. While you still have it at 14.9, and that would have also given a better signal to the business community because they know that this is where it has always been. That is better than forcing it down to 10 and then it comes to almost 13. Then you force it down again to 10. I mean, that kind of volatility, I don't think it is helping the business world. And it doesn't also help us, especially when in 2027 we need more dollars to go to the international market to service our desktop.
All right, Doc. I'm sure we'll definitely have a further conversation along those same lines so that we can bring we can get an understanding, a deeper understanding of exactly what we're talking about. But I'm really grateful for your time and thanks so much for sharing your insights with us this morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Okay. Well, that was Dr. George Domfe sharing his thoughts with us this morning on the Fitch Solutions projection. I mean that we're going to end the CD. Sorry, we are going to end the year well in terms of our currency. And Doc has agreed to that, but he says that there are certain structural things that we need to deal with as a country. And to be able to do that, I mean, all hands needs to get on board, Bank of Ghana interventions and all of that. These things must be measured so that we keep the country running very well. All right, so that's how we wrap up today on the Business Breakfast on Z. I think it's been a great conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much to Dr. George Domfe. He's a development economist at the University of Ghana. And thanks so much to you also for staying with us right from 6:15 till now. We're back again tomorrow. My name is Nitra B. Hammond. Please keep listening to Z 101.9 FM. And when you think Ghana, think Z. Up next is an inspiring initiative from the Rise Up Bring project to strengthen rural communities across Ghana. And today's impact story is that of column 2 from Doma, and it's about poultry farming and egg production. Please have a listen and stay inspired. See.
Welcome to the journey of the Rise Up Bring project, an inspiring initiative committed to strengthening rural communities across Ghana.